Okay, so Shabbat Shalom, everyone who are in person, those online, and those watching later. This week's portion is Chayei Sarah. And so it begins in Genesis chapter 23. It starts in verse 1 and goes through chapter 25, verse 18. And then the Haftorah is actually First Kings 1. And so this portion begins with the life of Sarah, Chayei Sarah. And, when we begin in Genesis 23, it's interesting. It doesn't begin with her life, but it starts with her death. And so, and, it's a picture too that, at the very limit that the death puts upon your life, it makes every year of your life more precious. And so this made me think about the verse in Psalms 90, verse 12. It says, "So teach us to number our days that we may apply our hearts to wisdom." I know the complete Jewish Bible words it this way. So teach us to count our days so that we will become wise. And so the whole point, when you're, faced with death here is, about taking each day and making it a day to become wise. And what gives true value to our lives is not those material possessions or those material things or those pleasures, that we can enjoy, the wealth we amass, but it's the spiritual things. It's to be the things that of our eternal value that we take with us after our life. So we're going to go to Genesis chapter 23, and I'm going to start in verse 1. Sarah lived to be 127 years old. These were the years of Sarah's life. Sarah died in Kiryat Arba, also known as Hebron, in the land of Canaan. And Abraham came to mourn Sarah and weep for her. Then he got up from his dead one, and he said to the sons of Het, "I'm a foreigner living as an alien with you. Let me have a burial site with you so that I can bury my dead wife." The sons of Het answered Abraham, "Listen to us, my lord. You are a prince of God among us. So choose any of our tombs to bury your dead. Not one of us will refuse you his tomb for burying your dead." Okay, so as we begin here in verse 2, there is an anomaly that happens in the Hebrew. You have on a Torah scroll a very small kaf in the middle of a word. And remember, in Hebrew, there are no such things as capital letters or small letters. So if you see a small one, or a large one, it's Yah's pointing you to something. And it's actually in the word livkoa, which is actually where it says in verse 2, where that Abraham came to mourn and weep for Sarah. Okay. And it's taught that this kaf is written small because Abraham is a righteous man, and he understood that his grief and his mourning should be restrained. That he recognized that, yes, I'm going to miss her. And yes, she was, his wife, but it was only temporary. We are only temporary sojourners here, and that you are going to be with her again one day, and that our souls are immortal, and that if we maintain our righteousness, that we would one day again meet and be with our beloved. So that's, they're saying that kaf is written small because he's limiting his grief and recognizing that, yes, I miss her, but I'm going to see her again. So
she was living in a separate place from him.
Some believe that she was living in a separate place, or some see it because she went back to, he went off to take Isaac to sacrifice. That, and during that time, she went to a different place. But, she went to Kiryat Arba, which is Hebron, which actually would have been closer to where he was.
So maybe she was just trying to follow to get closer to see if it was.
or that she was, she was just waiting there. I don't know. But I know some people say, oh, well, she was living in a different place. I don't personally think that she was living in a different place. I think that she was just, going to stay while he's gone, waiting, and you're waiting for him to return with your son and didn't know, when he would be back.
He had to know where to go to mourn her, so he knew,
He knew where she was.
yeah.
Now, in that word, livkoa, that, where it says he came to mourn, the first three letters that are in front of that small kaf spell the word valev, which means and the heart. And the last letters that are after, the last three letters, if you read them from the parent roots to the inside, it actually spells out the word hukat, which means is crushed. So in that word too, we've got our heart is being crushed. And when our heart is crushed, a lot of times we feel like we're alone. Yah is not there. But that small cough was showing us too that even though our heart may be crushed, we're still in his hand, even though it may seem like it's small.
So that's in the word mourn.
It's in that word.
Hebrew.
Yeah, it's written in Hebrew. If you look at the letters, if you look at the letters that are before that small cough and then after, that it's basically that, it's showing you Yah is still in control there.
Well, you look how long they had been together. So I guess it was crushing him. Yeah. That's what you said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that it was, but then he gets up and he goes on. So, and so, like you said, we see Sarah dies in Kiryat Arba, which is also called Hebron, which is south of Jerusalem. And remember, where I believe that he took Yitzack to sacrifice is right there at Mount Moriah, which is in Jerusalem. So, and if you're, like if you are in Jerusalem and you go south, you actually go to Bethlehem and then down to Hebron. And so it says, here in the parsha that Abraham came to mourn and weep for her. Why did he have to come to mourn and weep for her? Because you remember that, Abraham and Sarah went to Gerar, which is over near Gaza, in Genesis 20 to Abimelech. And then, there was the whole issue that they had with the well, which was at Beersheba. And then that is right after he takes Isaac in Genesis 22 to sacrifice on Mount Moriah. So at some point, Sarah had to have left Beersheba and go up to Kiryat Arba. And that's the place where Sarah is buried today, is in Kiryat Arba. And this Shabbat is the Shabbat, for Sarah's life. And so every year on this Shabbat, you end up having about 50 to 60,000 Jews that will actually go and descend to the tomb of the patriarchs in Kiryat Arba for this reading.
And if you look at the bigger picture of it, it was in God's plan that she die there because that was a cave that he could buy with the land around it because he never owned any land. This was the only place he ever owned in his until he died.
Right. Well, and this is the first deeded property that we see of in scripture. But, it's interesting that all of the areas that we see that are deeded that were actually bought, even like this, and then David, where he bought the threshing floor, all of those are like disputed areas today.
Yeah.
And so, but this, biblically, we have a picture of scripture recording that this land was bought and deeded to them. So
it was a big enough cave and burial place for him and her and family.
Right, yeah.
Because later on, there was others.
Yeah, Jacob, yeah.
Yeah, and Leah, yeah.
So here, this tomb of the patriarchs is a famous place today, and that's where they go. And, interesting, if you look at verse 3, it talks about, Genesis 23:3. Then he got up from his dead one and he said to the sons of Het. And so we see Abraham is getting up from his, from Sarah, the dead one. And in Hebrew, the word here is vayakum, which means to arise or like to stand up. And so this implies that, Abraham was actually sort of like sitting down. And, part of the Jewish mourning custom is, when a person dies, that you will sit Shiva for 7 days after they die. And they basically are sitting down while being comforted and mourned by family and friends and things like that. And there's a whole, especially in the Orthodox, a whole rules for going through sitting Shiva. So,
Well, too, was Abraham had a lot of wealth.
mhm.
So Sarah had to have not maids, but what you call them that work
Like,
for her,
yeah,
stayed
like
with her.
servants. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and served her and
Yeah.
helped her.
Yeah.
So they would have went with her to do her burial.
Oh, well, that would have been, yeah.
They would have been there with her
Yeah.
at her time.
At her death, yeah.
Because, just not anybody can do,
Yeah. Well,
So, and so they would have been there.
well, it's different then because it was a part of life. So when you look at it there, it's not like emotionally, we're like, oh, emotionally, I'm not made for that. But back then that wasn't the case. When somebody died, your family, you automatically did it. It was part of that. You didn't have that like we do today. So
My mom.
yeah, but it's today we've got people that will go in and do that for you. People don't have to do that. But back then it was a part of life, just like killing and slaughtering your animals was a part of life. So, but this really, is a lesson for us that, as a believer and one who's crossed over, that when we are faced with the death of a loved one, you got to keep going on.
Yeah.
And that it's, he got up, he mourned, but then he got up and he went and did other things.
What God had planned for him has not ended there.
Yeah.
He had to he couldn't just stay and keep going. He had to go and do what God had planned.
And we're not exempt. Nobody is exempt from death. We're all, going to encounter death. So, and Sarah, like we said, Sarah's death is linked with this purchase of land in Israel. And it's basically through her death that he has the opportunity to directly buy this land, even though Yah had already given it to him. Here is the first picture of him actually buying it. And in a way, he's buying it for his bride. It's like he's redeeming his bride. And, he pays 400 shekels for this, which is an exorbitant amount for that time. And one thing that I saw said that it actually equaled 50 years of wages for the average person. And, if that's true, you think about, well, 50 is the Jubilee, and then, the Yovel, and what is the Jubilee? It's the year of release. And, here it's he's purchasing a site, which is a picture of the Mashiach, buying us back from the, death, that price that was paid.
And you can see too, from the time he left his family and his home, when God called him, God increased him in wealth.
Oh yeah, he was very wealthy.
And that wealth was what helped buy this place.
Right.
And for him to live, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
He's getting on an age, 100-something years old, So.
And so Abraham pays 400 shekels. Well, 400 in Hebrew is the value of the Hebrew letter Tav. And Tav means a mark. And so this is like a mark of the covenant, and Abraham is like purchasing or redeeming this location, and he marks it, or he's stamping it with this Tav, the covenant. And so not only is Sarah redeemed or restored from the dust, but think about Adam and Eve. This place is called Kiryat Arba, or the city of four, and there's various thoughts as to why it's called the city of four. But one is that Adam and Eve were buried there, and we end up having Abraham and Sarah being buried there, and we end up having Yitzack and Rivka. And then we end up having, Yaakov and Leah being buried there. So it's actually being doubles. So there's lots with pictures of the doubles there. And that's, another word to look at. Let me see where I was going. So the life of Sarah here is really talking about the legacy that she's leaving behind. Because it starts with her death. And we're going on, not really talking about her, but talking about Yitzack. And, think about, this. We don't really see Yitzack mentioned here. We see Abraham mentioned that, coming to mourn her, but we don't see Yitzack. And this was right after the offering of Yitzack. And we don't really see Yitzack mentioned until we get further over in this parsha where it talks about him waiting for his bride. Mm-hmm. And so why? Because, Yitzack's her son and her only son at that.
Well, he would have been in his 70s, wouldn't he?
No, Yitzack was about 40 at this time.
At this time?
Yeah, he was, he was 37, they thought of when she died.
Okay. I thought he was like 70.
No, because he's 40 when he married. Mm-hmm. So Yitzack is a picture of the promise. And if you think about it, he is a picture of the son that was sacrificed. And now he's hidden.
Undoubtedly, that's what he lived in his mama's place because he was there at the tent, and that's where he took his bride into his mama's tent.
But
is that where
I think that doesn't necessarily mean a literal tent there. I think that's a picture of, necessarily the hospitality that she was known for giving, that she was now the matriarch of the family. And if because if you think about what was going on here, I won't go ahead, but she, because where he's living at when he finds her, is down at the border, all the way down south. It's not in Kiryat Arba. It is way down south near the border.
Why does scripture say he took
her into his mother's tent? Because that is, his mother was known for her hospitality. She was the matriarch of the family. She was the one who basically set the example for the whole family.
Went and prepared that place for his
So now it is what's happening. His mother is dead. He is now going to be the leader. And what happens is his bride is going to take on that role.
Oh, okay.
She's taking on that role.
What it says in scripture, it makes it all different. I mean, it just throws a different light, like was her place, like Sarah's, all that, at that time. And
yeah. So, and a lot of times we read, we're reading and putting our understanding of today in with that instead of looking at how they actually did things then. So the life of Sarah is through the legacy that she leaves behind. And Abraham now is going to turn his attention over to his son Yitzack, because as long as Yitzack is not married, the covenantal promise of descendants can't be fulfilled. Abraham was promised to be the father of nations, and yet if Yitzack isn't married and doesn't have kids, that's not happening. And so now he's turning his attention to fulfilling that. And if we go to chapter 24, and I'm actually just going to read very quickly Genesis 24, and then we'll talk about some things. Okay, by now Abraham was old and advanced in his years, and Adonai had blessed Abraham in everything. And Abraham said to his servant who served him the longest, who is in charge of all he owned, "Put your hand under my thigh, because I want you to swear by Adonai, God of heaven and earth, that you will not choose for a wife for your son, for my son from among the Canaanite whom I am living, but that you will go to my homeland, to my kinsmen, to choose a wife for my son Yitzack." And the servant replied, "Suppose the woman isn't willing to follow me to this land, must then I bring your son back to the land which you came?" And Abraham said, "See to it that you don't bring my son back there. And Adonai, the God of heaven, who took me away from my father's house and away from the land I was born in, who spoke to me and swore to me, I give this land to your descendants. He will send his angel ahead of you, and you are to bring a wife for my son from there." But if a woman is unwilling to follow you, then you are released from your obligation under my oath. Just don't bring my son back there. The servant put his hand under the thigh of Abraham, his master, and swore to him concerning the matter. Then the servant took the 10 of his master's camels and all the kinds of gifts from his master, and got up and went to Aharam Naharim, to Nahor's city. Toward evening, even when the women go out to draw water, he had the camels kneel down outside the city by the well, and he said, Adonai, the God of my master Abraham, please let me succeed today and show grace to my servant. Oh, sorry, I hit the button. To my grace to my master Abraham. And here I am standing by the spring as the daughters of the townsfolk come out to draw water. I will say to one of the girls, please lower your jug so that I can drink. And if she answers, yes, drink, and I will water your camels as well, then let her be the one you intend for your servant. Yitzack, this is how I will know that you've shown grace to my master. And before he had finished speaking, Rivkah, the daughter of Bethuel, the son of Milcah, the wife of Nahor, Abraham's brother, came out with a jug on her shoulder. The girl was very beautiful, a virgin, never having sexual relations with any man. And she went down to the spring, filled her jug, and came up. And the servant ran to meet her and said, please give me a sip of your water from my jug to drink. And drink, my lord, she replied. And immediately she lowered her jug onto her arm and let him drink. And when she was through letting him drink, she said, I will also draw water for your camels until they have drunk their fill. And she quickly emptied the jug into the trough and then ran again to the well to draw water, and kept on drawing water for his camels. And the man gazed at her in silence, waiting to find out whether Adonai had made his trip successful or not. And when the camels were done drinking, the man took the gold nose ring weighing 1/5 of an ounce and 2 gold bracelets weighing 4 ounces and asked, whose daughter are you? Tell me, please, is there room in your father's house for us to spend the night? And she answered, I am the daughter of Bethuel, the son of Milcah, born to Nahor. Adding, we have plenty of straw and fodder and room for staying overnight. And the man bowed his head and prostrated himself before Adonai. And then he said, blessed be Adonai, the God of my master, Abraham, who has not abandoned his faithful love for my master, because Adonai has guided me to the house of my master's kinsman. Okay, so I'm going to stop right here. But really, in the past, we've gone through and we've talked about all the symbolism with, who the father was, about the servant, it's not mentioned by name, it's Eliezer, but we talked about that and that who that is a picture of. And so this year I didn't want to do that. I wanted to look at something else. But you can go back and I'll put the link to last year's teaching that really goes through in depth looking at each one of those. But I really wanted to focus this year on the search for the bride. And I started really looking at this, and the thing that stuck out to me is really, this is the second time that we see the selection of a bride. Because if we go back to the very beginning in Genesis, remember all the animals were brought before Adam? Yeah. And the selection was made there, and he's like, there's not one suitable. Yeah. And Genesis 2:18, it says, Adonai, God said, it isn't good that the person should be alone. I will make for him a companion suitable for helping him. And so that was the first time we saw a selection of a bride, was with Adam. Mm-hmm. And that term, companion suitable, is actually in the Hebrew Ezer K Nagido, which is more than just a helper. It is actually translated like a helper that's going to oppose him. Because, the bride was supposed to be that person that is helping to balance or guide her husband in the right direction. And so in Genesis, we see that Yah is bringing Adam and Eve, Adam and Hava, together. And in Revelation, we see that Yah brings the Messiah and his bride together. And that, here we see a choosing of the bride too with Rivka. And it wasn't about finding someone that was beautiful. It wasn't about finding somebody beautiful that was going to be this bride for his son. It was about something more. It was going to be about the character and the spirit that the bride displayed. And if you think about, what what happens is immediately when Eliezer is tasked with going to find this bride, he could have really, because Yitzack didn't say he just said, don't take her from the Canaanites. So he could have picked the first person that he chose to meet in the land and ask her to come back. And if she said no, it would have been okay. And he would have fulfilled his job. But he didn't do that.
So this is the bride for it.
It's like,
Eliezer out. So, because Jacob, the parallels are so similar, when Jacob goes.
He goes to the same family,
Same thing. You have to get in your mind, okay, we're talking about one.
Yeah, but Yitzhak, when you look here at Eliezer could have picked the first woman he encountered.
Yeah, but he
and asked
specifically to God what.
Yeah, and
he needed to know.
Well, and two, if you look at what happened here, Eliezer realizes that it is about the character of her. It's not about what she looks like or anything. And because he specifically asked Abraham, he's like, well, what if the bride doesn't want to come back? And he's like, well, then you fulfilled your vow and you're fine. So,
yeah, because you could have any woman coming down to the well.
Yeah, he didn't even have to go.
The attitude of them is going to be different.
Right.
Each one is going to be different. And she had a mentality of helping and
right, hospitality.
Yeah, hospitality and all that about her.
Yeah, and so really, if you look at this servant here, which we said, in the previous teaching, it's a picture of the Ruach. And what does the Ruach do? It is going to examine our hearts.
Yeah.
And Zephaniah chapter 1, Zephaniah 1 and verse 12 says, when that time comes, I will search Jerusalem with lamps and punish those who are smug and thick like wine, left too long on its dregs, who say to themselves, Adonai will do nothing, neither good nor bad. And so, look at what's happening here. The Ruach is going to search. And here we see that in Zephaniah, that just like the scriptures, he's going to search out Jerusalem with lamps. Well, he's going to search out the hearts. And he begins just like with a house. So Yah's beginning with Jerusalem. He's beginning with his house, his people there. And in Proverbs 20 and verse 27, it says that the human spirit is the lamp of Adonai, and it searches its innermost being. So are we displaying the characteristics of the bride that he's looking for? What? He had that look.
I'm just thinking about the 10 virgins and what the order is in the land.
Yes, which I'm going to go there in a minute too. You have to think about that. You have to think about, are we displaying that? Are we really doing what, because there's a whole midrash on, like some believe that, Rivka was only 3 years old.
Oh, come on.
And that, she was doing that. They look at that, and I'm sitting here thinking,
that's getting in the.
Yeah. And then, no, that's in Orthodox Judaism. There is a sect that believe that she's only 3 years old, that she's doing that. And that, which I don't agree with that, but, and then
She
two,
would even be down there at the well carrying water at that
yeah,
age
and then,
that.
and then two, there's a whole, think about, but what is she doing? To me, if she's being able to, take the jug and down to the water, and lift it up on her shoulder, that's probably not something a small child's going to do. So,
Verse 13 of that same chapter
Mhm.
24. I always thought it was just that Rivka showed up, but I'm seeing here, I'm standing by the spring, is what he's telling Anna. I'm standing by the spring, and the daughters of the men of the city are coming out to
Yeah.
draw water.
Yeah.
So there had to be something that stood out in Rivka for him to ask her.
Yeah.
There had to be something in her countenance, in the way she carried herself, in
Mhm.
the way she spoke to others.
Right.
He had to be observing,
Mhm.
I mean,
Yeah, he had to see something in her to ask her to do.
yeah.
And two, that comes back to, I think Yah's divine hand in leading him into where he's going, because he immediately, when he gets there, he immediately goes to pray. This is what, and he's, some people say, well, he's laying out this fleece saying, this is how I want you to do it. But he's actually praying, Yah, you intervene. And before he gets through, it's when this happens. So, now I want to back up to 24 verse 10. Notice what it says here, that the servant took 10 of his master's camels and all kinds of gifts from his master. And he got up and he went to Aram Naharim, to Nahor's city. So the bride was located in Nahor's city, and Nahor was Abraham's brother. Okay, so this city is called Nahor City because Nahor lived there, but Nahor's name means snorting or snoring. And so think about what this is saying, that these were the descendants of Shem, because Nahor, okay, but yet they were sleeping. Think about that picture. And that goes to exactly what you were saying in Matthew. So let's go to Matthew chapter 25. Matthew chapter 25. And I'm going to go to the start in the first verse. Now, the kingdom of heaven at that time will be likened to 10 bridesmaids who took their lamps and they went out to meet the groom. 5 of them were foolish and 5 of them were sensible. The foolish ones took lamps with them, but no oil, whereas the others took flasks of oil with their lamps. Now the bridegroom was late, so they all went asleep. It was in the middle of the night when the cry rang out, the bridegroom is here, go out to meet him. And the girls all woke up and prepared their lamps for lighting. The foolish ones said to the sensible ones, give us some of your oil because our lamps are going out. No, they replied, there may not be enough for both you and us. Go to the oil dealers and buy some for yourselves. But as they were going off to buy, the bridegroom came. Those who were ready went with him to the wedding feast, and the door was shut. Later, the other bridesmaids came and said, Sir, sir, they cried, let us in. But he answered, indeed, I will tell you, I don't know you. So all 10 of the bridesmaids were asleep. But yet there's some differences. The 5 wise woke up and they were ready to come out. And if you think about, this city where the servant went to get the bride for Yitzack was Nahor city, which was in Mesopotamia, Babylon, really. So the bride was in the midst of Babylon, but she had to be willing to wake up and come out of Babylon. Just like in Revelation 18:4, where it says, I heard a voice from heaven saying, come out of her, my people, so that you won't partake in her sins and so that you won't receive her plagues. And so she has to, all 10 of them woke up, but only 5 were willing to come out. And another difference is that the 5 wise brought oil with them. And the oil is what gives light.
Now, the other ones had oil in their lamp.
They had oil in the lamp, but they didn't bring oil with them.
They didn't bring extra.
And they probably left it burning while they
Through the
slept.
night, yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's why theirs didn't have any, and the others had some to refill.
Right.
You know,
Psalms 119, 105. Psalms 119, 105. Your word is a lamp for my foot and a light on my path. Isaiah 8:20. Isaiah 8:20 says, to the law and to the testimony, if they speak not according to this word, it is because there is no light in them. So both of those are equating the word with the light and the oil. So all 10 of the bridesmaids had the word in them, but there's a difference between the wise and the foolish. Jeremiah 8:8. Jeremiah 8:8 says, how can you say we are wise? The Adonai's Torah is with us, when in fact the lying pen of the scribes has turned it into falsehood. The wise are put to shame, alarmed and trapped. They've rejected the word of Adonai. So what wisdom do they have? So, here we see it's clearly about wisdom is tied to the word, and it's what we do with that word. Are we taking that word to heart, or are we just taking it to head? Because many have the word in their head. They can say they believe in Yeshua. They say they, follow, Jesus or whatever, but they're not living it or applying it to their lives. It's just in their head. And
I've known many people like that.
yeah, mm-hmm.
They can quote scripture left and right.
Yep. And they live a life completely different. And that's the difference here. When you think about this parable, all 10 of them have the word. They all have light. They all have the word. But still, he distinguishes there's 5 wise and 5 foolish.
He says, I do not know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Isn't there somewhere in Proverbs that talks about being slothful? Yeah, I mean, you always have to be prepared.
Yep.
Don't be like the snail or sluggish or something like that. Or,
Right.
Or be like the ant that's always busy
Yep.
preparing and, keep knowing something might happen.
Right. And then when you think about in Proverbs 3:7, it says, do not be conceited about your own wisdom, but fear Adonai and turn from evil.
Yeah.
So it's about your action with your faith.
Okay.
The test is what's in your heart. How do we act at our very worst times? How do we act when we're encountering a trial? How do we act when somebody rebukes us? And I'm going to go to Proverbs 9 and verse 8. It says, It says, if you reprove a scoffer, he will hate you. If you reprove a wise man, he will love you. Now, I don't know about you. I don't like being reproved. I don't like being rebuked, but it says that a wise person will love you through that rebuke, that they're not going to get angry or whatever. They're going to take it and accept it. In Proverbs chapter 10, verse 8, the wise person accepts instructions, but the one who speaks foolishness will come to ruin. So a wise person is going to accept his mitzvos, his instructions, his Torah. Mm-hmm. Proverbs 10 and 14. Wise people hide their knowledge, but when a fool speaks, ruin is imminent. So the wise is not boastful in what they know. They're going to be, more or less slow to speak. They're going to be taking things in. In verse 19, chapter 10, when words are many, sin is not lacking. So he who controls his speech is wise. So the wise, again, is slow to speak. Proverbs 13:14. The teaching of a wise man is a fountain of life, enabling one to avoid deadly traps. So a wise man's teaching enables a person to avoid a trap. Well, why? Because, what's a wise person teaching then? In Proverbs 11 and 30, it talks about that, the fruit of righteousness is a tree of life, and he who is wise is winning souls. Well, because what is their teaching? Their teaching is tied to the tree of life, which the tree of life is the Torah. It's his commands. So they're bearing the fruit of a righteous person. So the wise person is actually teaching the Torah, which would enable a person to avoid the traps of the enemy. Did you want to say something, Ken, or somebody? I couldn't see who. Maybe. Okay. So, and we think about, all of that tying into those wise there. And then you think about, the menorah, the lamps, that they had, just as the menorah, the lamp in the temple was to be lit continually. It was always to be burning. We're to keep our lamp filled with oil, because the priests were required to make sure there was oil in that lamp in the temple. And we are a living temple. We're to keep the oil in our lamps shining forth. Even, and if you go back to Exodus 27 and 20, it says, you are to order the people of Israel to bring pure oil of pounded olives for light, to keep a lamp burning continually. So, Matthew 5 and 15, talking about the lamps. Likewise, when the people light a lamp, they don't cover it with a bowl or put it on a lampstand so that it shines for everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before people so that they may see the good things you do and praise your Father in heaven. Well, and when I read that, I've read it numerous times, but this time when I read it, something stuck out to me that I think I've just sort of read over in the past. Notice that it says that so they may see the good things that you do. So it's tied to your actions. It's not so they're seeing the light, they're seeing the good things that you do. So if we go back to the parable, those 5 bridesmaids had, 5, foolish ones had lamps, but they didn't have extra oil. And what did the 5 wise tell them? Yep. They went and said, okay, give us part of yours. But when it comes to the time, they're like, no, I'm not giving you any of mine. You can't have any of my work. You're going to have to go to who? Buy from the oil dealers. Well, who are the oil dealers? If the oil is a picture of the word, then who would be the oil dealers? who gives you the word?
Yeah.
Sure.
You're gonna have to go to the pastors, you know.
Yeah, or either I guess the, what you call them, that reads the Torah there.
The Levites. Yeah. Well, when you think about, so here they're saying, basically this is a parable. So you're thinking about, okay, well, you got to go to the people and where do you get the word from? You got to go out and get the word. So go to those pastors, go to those who are going to give you the word then. So the 5 unwise then had to leave and go out and try to get this word because the bridegroom's coming.
And the oil is not going to do any good by itself. You have to light it.
Yeah.
You have to acknowledge it.
And to me, it stuck out that the 5 wise at this point, normally, you think about, oh, well, you're going to give people the word. You're going to be giving it out there. If they're going to ask you something, you're going to share it. But the 5 wise recognize, this is not the time to share. This is the time to hold on to what I have.
And where I got it.
And where I got it from. And it's in me. And I'm not
give it to you out of my heart. You have had to cultivate it to be in your heart.
Right.
Because he says that we hide his word in his heart.
Yep.
So that we might not
sin against it. Yeah.
And it's like a fire that burns within us.
Right.
Yeah.
Because like you say, the oil is it's useless unless you've got it lit. You've got to keep it lit, keep it burning within you. Because it can go out.
Right.
You can let it, people can back away and let it go out slowly and not realize it till it's gone.
And then these 5 unwise were basically like people who have the word, they got a form of religion, but they don't have the power of it.
Right.
And that's in 2 Timothy 3. 2 Timothy chapter 3 and verse 1. It says, moreover, understand this, in the Aharet Hayamim, the last days, will come trying times. People will be self-loving, money-loving, proud, arrogant, insulting, disobedient to parents, ungrateful, unholy, heartless, unappeasable, slanderous, uncontrolled, brutal, hateful of good, traitorous, headstrong, swollen with conceit, loving pleasure rather than God. So think about this is a description of what people are going to be like. And it says that they're retaining the outer form of religion. So these are people that are appearing to be godly people that are doing all these things. But they deny its power. And he clearly says, stay away from these people.
And it is so rampant right now. All over the world. Just
lovers of money,
flesh, all this stuff. Every one of those. It's just.
And our universities have raised a generation of women.
Yeah. And only 5 bridesmaids had enough of the word, enough of the oil in order to endure to the end.
Well, Terry said that, colleges, the churches has raised generations.
Yeah.
Well, they truly haven't spoke up.
Righteousness without any truth. It's the classic, mixing of the world and the word. They've got part of that word, but they got the world with it.
Right.
And mixed it with it. And that's okay.
Right.
It's okay with them.
And I'm sorrowful to say it, but most of the churches now is a playground. It's not a place to teach the word. It's some place for the teenage kids and the baby kids and the little nursery parts, not to do little games and play things and da-da-da. It's not really sitting there teaching them, I remember the little sticky things on a pad, that's all we did. We didn't play little games and stuff or go, it's teenagers didn't go do this. And that. They sit under the word,
And so this got me to thinking about the oil, because the oil is what produces the light. And the oil, in ancient times came from olives. Well, you don't just take an olive and get oil. and that's it. You know, you got to crush it and press it.
Yeah.
So if we are to have the word, the oil in us, in order to produce light, that olive, that word has to be tried and tested.
Mhm.
Well, how is the word tried and tested in our lives? Through adversity.
And you know,
Jane,
it just struck me too. Now there's different types of olives.
Mhm.
To get the pure, you have to use a certain olive, you know, and put it in there and in that oil press, you know, and it's wrapped. and
Yeah,
it's
the first,
pressed,
yeah.
to get the first pure oil.
Yeah,
So that's the difference. You know, we can sit under some teaching. It's not the pure oil. You
Mhm.
know what I'm saying?
Mhm. Well,
And you have to make sure you know that you're sitting under someone that's using the pure oil.
well,
teaching.
and then you've got to have it tested, tried, and used. So when you look at James 1:3, it says, "For you know that the testing of your trust, your faith, produces perseverance."
Mhm.
But perseverance do its complete work so that you may be complete and whole and lacking in nothing. So the trials and tribulations that we face, you know, and I was just talking to a friend this week, is that, you know, if you go back to the verse right before that, and this is a verse she always quotes, and there's a big issue going on in her life, and then, you know, this horrible situation, and she says, "Count it all joy." You know, I mean, this horrible situation she's going through. If James 1:2, it says, "Regard it as joy, my brothers, when you face those temptations and trials." And so, you know, when she's looking at it, you know, she's like, "Yeah, I'm going through this, but it's joy. You know, I'm going to count it all joy that, you know, he's doing something through it."
Yeshua told us, he says, in this world,
Mhm.
you are going to have troubles.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, let me go there. Okay. Do I have that?
I rejoice because I have overcome you.
Yeah.
Let me see if that was the one. I put that there.
Yeah. Just keep.
I did not.
Persevering. That's all you do.
You know, in walking in my faith walk
Mhm.
early in my life, I was convinced that I was not supposed to have trials and temptations.
Yeah.
It was what I perceived as from the message.
Right.
And when I did have trials, I thought, well, I must be doing something wrong.
Right.
You know, I'm not confessing right. I'm not talking right. I'm doing something wrong, and it's bringing all these trials and tribulations. But Yeshua went through trials and tribulation. And
Mhm.
who do we think we are if we think that we're going to be above Yeshua and not have trials and tribulation?
Right.
You know, who is it that, I mean, he didn't spare his own son,
Mhm.
you know, with trials and tribulations. So who do we think we are that we don't get to go through trials and tribulations?
If we never have them, how will we know?
Yeah. Now, that is a question that is one question that I have is, they say there will be no more pain and no more suffering in heaven. How will we continue to grow if we don't have adversity?
Yeah. And I think too, because we're not going to be in this humanly,
Right.
fleshly form at
Yeah.
that state, that
Yeah.
we're going to be in that spiritual body to where we don't, I don't know how to say it, but I think about sometimes that it's not like I'm going to have to grow. I'm going to know it. You know what I'm saying? It's just going to be there. I'm going to think it and know the answer. It's not like I'm having to go through.
Be
He's-
communing with
yes.
us on a
Mhm.
continuous
Right.
basis.
I want to go to that verse you were talking about. Wait a second. In Matthew chapter 16. And verse 21 is where I want to start, because this is the one you brought up, Terry. Matthew 16 and verse 21. From that time on, Yeshua began making it clear to his Talmudim that he had to go to Jerusalem and to endure much suffering at the hands of the elders, the head Kohanim and the Torah teachers, and that he had to be put to death. But on the third day that he had to be raised to life. Okay, so he's teaching them, this is what's going to happen. I'm going to have to go through these sufferings and I'm going to do this, but I'm going to die. And then the third, and then in verse 22, it says, but Kepha took him aside and began rebuking him, said, heaven be merciful, Lord. By no means will this happen to you. Okay. But Yeshua turned his back on Kepha, saying, get behind me, Satan. You are an obstacle in my path because your thinking is from a human perspective, not from God's perspective. So look at what he's saying there. He's actually condemning Peter, what Peter said. Well, what did Peter say? You're not going to have to go through any adversity. You're not going to have to go through any trials. It's going to be all good. And he's like, that's not that's not the word of God. The word of God says you're going to have trials. And he basically is rebuking Peter because I think about what a lot of the, I don't want to say prosperity message and, is that everything's going to be good. You're just going to have, and then he's like, no, that's not. And that's exactly what Yeshua is saying here. It's not that what you are going to have to go through those trials and tribulations during that time. So
24 says, if anyone wishes to come after me, he must deny himself.
Yep.
Take up his cross and follow me. And whoever wishes to save his life, he will lose it.
Right.
Whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. So many things that I used to read, but yet it would just contradict what I was being taught. But then again, was it me and the way I was looking at the message? I don't know, but I surely didn't believe that I was supposed to have, pain, suffering, sickness, disease. And I do believe God is a God who heals because,
right,
he does. It says that he does. And I've seen it. I've witnessed it in my own personal life. And I don't understand some of the things that happen or have happened, but I have to realize God is good all the time. He is good. He will make all things work to those who love him and are called according to his purposes. He is good.
Right.
He is faithful. And, no matter what, Yeshua went to the tree saying, and believing that God was faithful. God was going to raise him up from the third day. He went to that tree facing that. And it says, for the joy set before him, he endured the cross. My gosh. Can you get there? You can get there. You can have joy. Look at all the disciples, how they died.
Yeah.
None of them died they all died horrible deaths, even Paul and John. But John suffered at the hands of those, but yet God delivered him out of them all. Yeah.
And you think about too, it's, and I heard Halissa Elwine, she said, choose your suffering. It's better to suffer for the kingdom than it is to suffer his wrath.
Oh, absolutely.
Because if you think about it in terms of, well, I can just live however and do whatever, and then you may end up having to suffer his wrath. But if I'm suffering to, I'm having to go through these trials, I'm having to do this, I'm having to, I'm putting myself through certain things to where I can learn to be a better person. I'm learning to shut my mouth. I'm learning to shut up and not say things. And I'm doing that. And yes, it is, a suffering, but I'm doing that so that I can learn to be better so that I won't encounter those things.
The wrath of God.
Yeah.
It's the scripture at where it says he won't put on, he won't let anything be put on you no more than you can stand.
That is, wait a minute. It's not worded that way, but
I know it.
let me see.
I always, sometimes I wake up 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning and I turn the radio on. I listen to the radio and this missionary.
Go ahead.
and this missionary was on, he was talking about, he said, I never could understand until I got, doing things, being involved in things. And he said, that scripture, have you got it? Can you read it?
Yeah, I'll read it. And because it's not talking about what people think it's talking about.
Right.
In 1 Corinthians 10:13, it says, no temptation
Yes.
has seized you beyond what people normally experience. And God can be trusted not to allow you to be tempted beyond what you can bear. Not that he's not going to put stuff on you. It's that he's not going to allow you to be tempted more than you can bear.
Well, he said, he said, I questioned that for a long time. And he said, I don't question anymore, but he said, I know that's not the end of that sentence. And that's not the end of what God is trying to say. So God is trying to say, you're going to go through a lot. I'm going to be there, but you're still going to have to go through some worse.
Yeah.
And worse and worse. And he said, people take it like, okay, if I suffer so much, then it's going to stop. He's going to do it. He's going to stop it. I won't have to suffer that bad. But he said, no. He said, you're going to have to go through more.
Yeah, it's about.
There's no limit. You're always going to be tested, to your limit and then more. And
it's about, he's not allowing you the temptation to be more than you can bear, but it's about, you're going to have to go through those trials. So,
yes.
And this, going back to the parsha, we know that Rivka was found at this well. Well, we see in the New Testament, another woman at the well, and I want to go there in John chapter 4. Because this woman in the well in the Brit Hadashah, I think, this story is related. In John chapter 4, I'm going to start in verse 6. And it talks about Yaakov's well. Yaakov's well was there. So Yeshua, exhausted from his travels, sat down by the well. It was about noon. And a woman from Shomron came to draw some water. And Yeshua said to her, give me a drink of water. And his Talmudim had gone into town to buy food. And the woman from Shomron said, how is it that you, a Jew, ask for water from me, a woman from Shomron? For Jews don't associate with people from Shomron. And Yeshua answered her, if you knew God's gift, that is who it is saying to you, give me a drink of water, then you would have asked him and he would have given you living water. And she said to him, sir, you don't have a bucket and the well is deep. So where do you get this living water? You aren't greater than our father Yaakov, are you? He gave us this well and drank from it, and so did his sons and his cattle. And Yeshua answered, everyone who drinks this water will get thirsty again. But whoever drinks the water I will give him will never be thirsty again. On the contrary, the water I give him will become a spring of water inside of him, welling up to eternal life. Sir, give me this water, the woman said, so that I won't have to be thirsty and keep coming here to draw water. And he said to her, go, call your husband and come back. And she answered, I don't have a husband. And Yeshua said to her, you're right, you don't have a husband. You've had 5 husbands in the past, and you're not married to the man you're living with now. You've spoken the truth. Sir, I can see that you're a prophet, the woman replied. Our fathers worshipped on this mountain, but you people say that the place where one has to worship is in Jerusalem. And Yeshua said, lady, believe me, the time is coming when you will worship the Father neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem. You people don't know what you're worshiping. We worship what we do know, because salvation comes from the Jews. But the time is coming, indeed it's here now, when the true worshipers will worship the Father spiritually and truly. For these are the kind of people that the Father wants worshiping him. God is spirit, and worshipers must worship him spiritually and truly. And the woman replied, I know that Mashiach is coming. That is the one who's been anointed. And when he comes, he will tell us everything. And Yeshua said to her, I, the person speaking to you, am he. Just then his Talmudim arrived, and they were amazed that he was talking to a woman. But none of them said, "What do you want?" or "Why were you talking with her?" So the woman left her water jar, went back to town, and said to the people there, "Come see a man who told me everything I've ever done. Could it be that this is the Messiah?" So, thinking about this woman at the well here in John chapter 4, we see that Yeshua is coming to this town in, Shomron or Samaria, where Yaakov's well was located, because that's the area that, Yaakov had given to Yosef, his son Yosef, which was the house of Israel.
Judea.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we see Yeshua is encountering the Samaritan woman at the well. Well, this woman is portrayed, to be this harlot, a prostitute, whatever. But I see that there's much more there, because she's a woman who knows about God, but she doesn't really know him. And she's wanting, to know the truth. And, basically, in a way, it's like she's tired of living this life. But, remember that Samaria is the capital of the northern kingdom. Okay. The house of Israel that went astray. And, they basically, northern kingdom mixed and intermarried. And so that the Samaritans were, a mixture. And so she's a type and a shadow of the house of Israel. And you think about, well, what is it? They know about God. They know a little bit about God. But she was considered this adulterous woman. Okay. Well, the house of Israel had God, and then they went astray. And notice what he says here. He says, "You're a woman who've had 5 husbands." He always taught in parables. She had 5 husbands. She had Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. She had the Torah. She used to have the Torah, but she's a picture of this that went astray, and she's with this, mixed relationship now. She's, and so basically, Yeshua, makes this woman. He tells her, and says, the woman, the one you're living with now is not your husband, So basically he's saying, you're living outside of the Torah. You had the Torah, but now you're living outside of the Torah. And, and she reminded Yeshua that here you are, you're, a Jew, you're from the house of Yehuda. And she even said, that she was, from the house of Israel. How can you ask me for a drink? And, because Yeshua knew if he asked her for a drink, he's going to be drinking out of her cup. Well, why would a Jew be doing that with someone that they consider, unclean? And this cup that he would be drinking from, is going to be her cup. And this cup is basically like a picture of the test. If you go back to Numbers 5, the test for the adulterous bride. Because remember, she has to drink of this cup. And he's actually showing them in a picture that I want to drink of that cup. I'm going to drink of that cup for you. And so the house of Israel, had become this adulterous bride. And because she had broken this covenant, and now she's, in this mixed relationship with, she has a little bit of the Torah, but not really. And that he's like, I'm going to take that, cup from you. I'm going to drink of that. You've got to realize that you are this adulterous bride, repent and come back to that way. And so at this point, the woman was aware of the separation that existed between the 2 houses. And that the house of Yehuda wasn't friendly to, Samaritans, and that they considered them unclean or defiled. And yet Yeshua said, if you knew the gift that, of Yah and who it is that's asking you for a drink, you would have asked for the living water.
And they still is, adulterous situation. It's, and of course the churches too.
Yeah, or still, we still, and you think about, we're, still learning about what are we doing even today that's still desecrating him, that's still, that's not his ways, what are we doing? Are we not sanctifying Shabbat enough? Are we not, listening to the Ruach? What are we not, doing? We're still doing those things.
But he's waiting mostly on his bride there to accept and turn back to him away from, because 80-90% is not what you call
Religious or
there. I mean, they want to be like America. I mean, and they get more and more like other countries.
Right. Yeah. And even talking about not only them, but, within the body itself. So, when Yeshua said, those things, he understood that he's basically, he's going back to Rivka's descendants, his own covenant people, that you were basically become like the Samaritans. He understood that basically they prostituted themselves and polluted themselves with idols and worshiped and did, holidays, pagan holidays and things like that. And that basically they were intimate with the secular world around them.
That's what's about Jacob. Going back, they sent him back to another covenant, go back to her people, Laban and all that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Rachel stole the animals when they left,
Yeah.
I mean, because they were taking it,
Yeah.
But I guess it was better to send them to a family than it would be somewhere else with him getting a bride like Esau.
Right. Yeah.
All those that he got.
Yeah.
And some of his was from Ishmael.
Well, you're looking, they're
Esau
married
and
outside of the
Ishmael,
family. Yeah.
Ishmael is what a far descendant of theirs because of Abraham.
Well, and he clearly tells them, to marry, choose someone from the family. It had to be from the family there. And so even Rivka, had to be redeemed from the house she lived in because, before, she became the bride, and, when you look at Rivka's name, Rebecca, it's spelled Resh Beit Kuf Hey, Resh Beit Kuf Hey. And if you read it backwards, okay, Hey Kuf Beit Resh, it is the word Hakever. Hakever is the grave.
It's what?
The grave.
The grave?
Mm-hmm.
Whoa.
Kever's. Okay.
Backwards there, girl.
Yeah. So, So the grave is actually Rivka spelled backward, which seems strange. You're talking. But if you think about the symbolism, it makes sense because the bride, Rivka, must come forth out of Babylon. She must come out of the grave, out of paganism, because if she's without Torah, she is as dead, okay, in order to be the bride. And if you take those words, if she comes out and you take Rivka's name, you actually can change the order of that and say, Hey, Kuf Resh, which is Haboker, the morning, because when you come out of the grave, when we become the bride, like Rivka, then we start a new day. We get a Haboker, a new day with our groom.
It always fascinated me, and I wonder too about Naomi and her husband and sons that moved to Moab.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, why not? But I don't know. But anyway, it was God's plan because I think Ruth is the most beautiful thing because of what she was, and then she married and her and she stayed right with Naomi,
Yeah, and she came out and she made that choice.
And she said, your God will be my God. Where you live, I'll live, I'll die for you.
Well, that's just like,
that because she's wholly accepted, and then she married Boaz.
Yeah.
And that's where the lineage, runs through.
Well, that was just like, I was listening to Rivka this morning, Adler, and one of the things that she had mentioned on there, she wasn't talking about this parsha. I was listening to something else, but she was talking about, and she made a comment about something, and I was sitting there thinking, I hadn't really thought about that. But in scripture, we know the story of Rahab, the harlot.
Yeah.
And how she was protected and provided and came out and everything. But I didn't realize that in Judaism that they believe that Joshua's wife, that Joshua ends up marrying her.
Well, I know she married someone from the tribe.
We don't know who.
No, we don't know who, but it had to be the tribe because of the lineage thing,
So not Rahab. No, this is Rahab, not Ruth.
Rahab had a bow, but
No, that's Ruth. That's Boaz. But I'm talking about Rahab. We don't really know
her on the wall, when it was on the wall with the
Yeah.
Wait a minute, I read that somewhere.
But we do see that, Joshua, saved her in Joshua 6 and stuff, and he spared her and her father's household and all that she had. And we don't really see that much more about her, but when things that she was talking about, she was like, they believe that, that's who Joshua married was actually Rahab. And I thought, well, that's another picture of like Ruth being grafted in and brought in and too.
Talking about Ruth, she had, even though she didn't have Torah, she did have character.
Yeah, she had the character. Yeah.
She had the character of Torah.
Right.
She had she had some, I reckon you'll say, good upbringing, or was it a choice that, it's like we all you can have 2 or 3 children in the same family and they can all go different directions.
Right.
Yeah.
Why? Because it's a choosing.
Right.
We have to choose every day who we will follow.
Right.
And that's
right. And you think about, this is a story you think about a lot of times pastors' kids.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Because their father is a pastor, sometimes they choose to be opposite of that. And so, or it's the other way around. You may have someone who's, parents or, whatever, and then they choose to be the opposite of their parent. And it's that same choice. Yeah.
With my father. My father was not a man who told me how much he loved me. He never told me until he was probably a few years from dying. But I made a choice that when I became a dad, a father, that my son was going to know that I loved him because I was going to tell him because I thought it was important. So I made a choice
to be that way. Yeah. And so that's, it comes back to, we all have that choice. We all have free will to do, and make our own decisions there. And it comes back to, when you look at Rivka, she chose to be compassionate or whatever. And when you look at how, all of the characteristics of Sarah, what she was known for is being very hospitable, and that's one of the reasons that Eliezer picked her, was because of he saw in her what she, her willingness to help others. So, and so, when you think about too, this parsha being called the life of Sarah, and even though it's about her death, Sarah's name is from the root sarar, which means to govern, to prince, to rule, or, to reign. And so,
you hear about her in Israel more than you do any woman. I think it's Sarah, because Rachel, they're not as big, but I guess because of Abraham.
Yeah, they do. They have a prayer about, Rachel too. So
may my children want to be Sarah and
And then too, when you think about that the root of that is actually from sarar, that root is only used twice in scripture, and both times it's used in reference to Yaakov wrestling. And in this wrestling or this pressing or this trial, Yaakov's name gets changed to Israel. So, this is about a battle and who has the right to rule or contend. Are we doing the work in ourselves, in our own lives, to be a bride?
Why did Jacob stay behind and wrestle? He knew.
Well, I don't want to go off on a different parsha this time, because that's a totally different parsha. Yeah, but but when you think about, are we doing what we need to do in our own life? Are we complaining when things go bad?
Yeah.
Are we, being bad mouth? Are we being negative? Are we talking about others? Are we, lying, or what are we doing? Are those things characteristics of the bride? And, when you think about for us to truly come out of the grave and everything, at the end, it talks about that the dragon goes after a specific type of person. In Revelation 12, it talks about the dragon being infuriated over the woman, and it goes off to fight, the rest of her children. And it tells you what type of people those are. Those who obey the Torah, God's commands, and bear witness to Yeshua.
And you don't hear that much about Sarah and her and Abraham. It's more about Abraham and, the others.
Mm-hmm.
And then Hagar. You start hearing more from Sarah at that time, about Hagar,
Mm-hmm.
and then on down after Isaac.
Yeah.
And Abraham would have kept Hagar and Ishmael there.
Yeah.
But, Sarah just said,
Well, you got to look at what the situation, what was happening there. And then
she knew to
Mhm.
send that person away.
Right.
And, but, Abraham, didn't, I guess it's because his firstborn son, really, but not the one God
Right.
said he would be firstborn. But I guess it was dad, but, but Sarah is really not mentioned much before.
Yeah, and then even
after that, not much.
no, and then you even look, he even, in this parsha, he gets married again and has more children.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he has more children. And, when you look at Judaism thinks that that's Hagar. That is Keturah is, that Keturah is Hagar.
Because he had like 7 more sons, I
With her,
think.
yeah.
Because he still sent them away. He
Yeah.
sent them east.
East, yeah.
Where do they fathom that from? Just tradition
Yeah. So,
from the Talmud?
yeah. So,
Okay.
and that's what they believe that it's her. So,
Because
But-
she and Ishmael went off and
Yeah.
she raised Ishmael and he got married. And he had,
Well, no.
yeah, there's 12. Yeah.
so she was still close by.
All those sons.
she was
were
Egyptian.
Basically the Arab nations.
Right. Mhm, mhm.
I
Yeah.
mean, they're step brothers,
Right. Yeah.
but they hate.
Each other. Yeah.
It's just like,
And then too, when you think about, what is the dragon? What is one of the characteristics is keeping Torah and bearing the witness of Yeshua. And, in Matthew 10 and verse 22, it says, everyone will hate you because of me, but whoever holds out to the end will be preserved from harm. So it's about enduring to the end.
you
Can you get her?
me? Oh,
And it's about enduring to the end. So it's not a matter of how we start our journey, but it's a matter of how we're going to finish our journey. Because it's not about just saying a prayer and living, saying John 3:16 and living any way we want. We have to live a life of faith and put our actions with our belief.
That I have fought the fight.
I fought the
Kept
fight.
the faith.
Mm-hmm. And so, like I said, it's not just about, saying that prayer and being okay and living how we want, because that's going to lead us to destruction. Which basically, what does that say? Okay. The belief in all you have to do is say a prayer, say John 3:16, whatever,
Mhm.
and that you're okay and you can live however. That's leading you down a path to destruction. And it basically leads you to have no fear of Yah. And we go back, that what is the beginning of wisdom? The fear of Yah. And so, and wisdom is the tree of life. And the tree of life is what leads us to eternal life. So if, it's about, we need to have that. We've got to have our belief and our actions there. I want to go over to Genesis 24, and I'm going to go down to verse 62.
Genesis 24.
Verse 62. Meanwhile, Yitzack, one evening, after coming along the road from Be'er Lacharoim, was living in the Negev, went out walking in the field, and as he looked up, he saw camels approaching. Rivkah too looked up, and when she saw Yitzack, she quickly dismounted the camel, and she said to her servant, "Who is this man walking in the field to meet us?" And when the servant replied, "It's my master," and she took her veil and covered herself. The servant told Yitzack everything he had done, and then Yitzack brought her into his mother Sarah's tent and took Rivkah, and she became his wife, and he loved her. Thus Yitzhak comforted for the loss of his mother. So this is the first time we see Yitzhak reappearing since he was sacrificed.
And boy, what a return.
Yeah, and so think about this. Yeshua, Yitzhak is a picture of Yeshua.
Yeah, this is the bride.
And then now there's a whole time that he is not there. And what's happening during that whole time that he's not there?
Well,
He's preparing a place for his new bride.
okay. Mm-hmm.
So the whole time that we see he's gone, he's preparing a place for the bride. And the bride comes into the promised land, before the revealing of who Yitzhak is as her groom. Because
Wait a minute, repeat that.
she comes to the promised land.
Before.
Yeah. Because where is he? He is at the southern part of Israel, down close to Egypt.
And she comes over.
Where did they have to go to get her? All the way up to north.
Yeah.
And Aram Naharaim. So comes all the way down.
And they left Israel, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Go to the land.
Yep, to Babylon to get her, and then brought her back, and then they're traveling through that. And so basically, in a way, and I was like, wait a minute, she's actually coming into that land before the revelation of her groom. And it says here that Yitzhak goes, he's out in the field one evening, and he's meditating in the field. Well, what does that mean, meditating in the field? It means, he's going out there to pray, whatever. He's seek Yah. He's experiencing this spiritual growth. And when he looks up, he sees the camels approaching. And, Rivkah looks up and she sees Yitzhak then. And so, her first glimpse of him is basically him praying.
Yeah. And she asked Eliezer.
Who is that?
Yeah.
And so, she gets off the camel and she's like, who is this man in the field that's coming to meet us? And he's like, oh, that's my master. And so that's when she takes the veil and she covers herself. And, so basically it actually took 3 years from the time that Sarah died until Rivkah and Yitzhak are married. Because, in Genesis 25 and verse 20, it says, Yitzhak was 40 years old when he took Rivkah, the daughter of Bethuel, the Aramee from Padam Aram, the sister of Lavan, the Aramee, to be his wife. So, thinking back to, who those people were. And like I said, you can go back to last year's video where I go in much more detail about the symbols and who they are. But Yitzhak being a picture of the groom, and that, that's a picture of Yeshua being the living sacrifice, and Eliezer, sorry, being the servant, or a picture of the Ruach. And the servant leads the bride to Yeshua. And, the servant doesn't go out looking for a bride until Yeshua was sacrificed. Until Yitzhak was offered up as an offering. He's not, the servant isn't sent out to look for a bride. And Rivkah, the bride has to come out of Babylon. And when she does come out and she's getting ready to meet her groom, she has a veil on her face. She's, has a veil covering her. And so Yitzack, the bridegroom is the one who really removes that veil.
And I don't even think he moves from that place for the whole rest of his life. I mean, he just stays there and, because it goes into Jacob and Esau being.
Yeah, we don't see a lot, yeah.
Yeah, but he just, and you don't hear nothing about him doing, and then he goes blind,
Yeah, you don't see a lot about him after that, so.
Oh, that's what, I don't know why, since he was the main player back with Abraham being, sacrificed,
Yeah.
and he was a grown man at that time. But nothing is ever.
Yeah, it's just, he
Nothing.
just sort of.
Found on that stuff about Isaac being offered as a sacrifice before the bride.
Yeah, because he's, when you think about it, he was a picture of a living sacrifice.
Mhm.
And then he disappears.
Yeah.
And you don't see him reappearing in the story
Yeah,
until.
just like Yeshua.
Exactly. Yeah, that's that whole picture. It's a whole picture of Yeshua. He was there, he was the living sacrifice, and then he disappears and he's gone. And then
he's going to return.
And then he's going to.
And then all of a sudden he returns.
And he returns, and we see the bride.
And there's the bride
coming forth, and she's.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That is really good.
And he chooses, he loves Esau. For some reason, he loves Esau more than he did Jacob, even though he knew the birthright of Jacob was going to be the one. Yeah.
Okay, so you're thinking about, thinking about in Yitzack's case, the servant, it's the Ruach, the picture of the Ruach that's delivering the bride to the bridegroom. So the bride, is basically scattered out there amongst the nations, and she's got to be one who's going to be willing to cross over. She's got to be one that not only wakes up like the 10 virgins, you think about all 10 of them woke up, but she had to be willing to come out. You remember when the servant asked, they're like, she's ready to go. She's like, yeah, let's just go. Let's just go.
She didn't even want to stay around.
Right.
She was ready to rock and roll toward. That's verse 66. The servant told Isaac all the things that he had done. So he took the time, I reckon, Rivka was off to the side or whatever, or doing things to maybe prepare herself. She's been on this long journey.
Yeah.
It's dirt and all that.
And she had her maids, handmaidens with
her too.
She had her veil up so that he wouldn't see her in that condition. She wanted to be
clean and pure.
And that's what the bride wants to be for Yeshua.
Right. And then and you think about the whole journey there, if it's taking basically, really 3 years total, I think maybe I look at it 1.5 years going and getting her, and then maybe 1.5 years coming back. But it would be like this whole picture of, her coming back. What is she doing? She's talking to Eliezer. She's learning about her bridegroom.
Going through trials and tribulations because guess what? There are robbers and thieves and everything else on that.
And you're learning that, you know what? Yeah, I used to eat this and I can't eat that anymore. They don't eat that right. And he does this. And she's learning
his ways.
She's learning his ways during that time. And so,
I guess that's why Eliezer was talking to Yitzack before that
she's brought together.
It was telling him everything. Okay, this is how she is. She's changed. She's cleaned herself up, and this is,
And so, if you look at this picture, us being like the picture of the bride, that we are scattered amongst the nations, too, and that here we are scattered amongst the nations, and we have to be willing to cross over. We have to be willing to, basically we're not being recognized by the land, as a foreigner anymore. We're learning about our groom and how to be his bride, and learning what does he like, what does he not like. It's not about what I want or what I like. It's about what does he like, and that, she's got to take that word in her heart and learn it and walk it and be obedient. And then too, I think that goes back to why Eliezer chose her, was that heart of willing to learn and her eagerness to help others. Yeah, she wasn't hesitant about it. And so basically that spirit, that ruach, is going to woo us from the nations, and we've got to be dressed and ready to go like those 5 wise virgins, and have oil in us. Now I want to look at the last part of the parsha in Genesis 25 and verse 7. It says, this is how long Abraham lived. 175 years. And then Abraham breathed his last, dying at a ripe old age, an old man full of years, and he was gathered to his people. So, to think about here, this parsha starts with the death of Sarah. And it has the death of Abraham at the end. Mm-hmm. And, we've got the apparent death and basically the resurrection of Yitzack in there. And then it's all about the search for this bride and her character and how she is going to act and be. So,
what surprised me was Ishmael, somehow they got in touch with him.
Yeah.
Abraham. I guess news traveled.
Right.
Because Abraham being who he was back then. But that he went Isaac to bury him at Sarah's tomb.
Right.
Which Sarah was the one that had a big thing and sending Ishmael away.
Right.
So that.
And that he,
and to because of Abraham.
Well, and you got to look too that just because Ishmael was sent away, he was still blessed.
Oh, yeah.
He was still blessed by Abraham.
He was there, 13, 14 years old when he was sent away.
Right, yeah.
He'd already bar mitzvah and circumcised. And
right.
That, so.
And he was blessed and, very wealthy.
Sons of his own.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, 12 princes.
Yeah, they had 12 princes, just like the 12 tribes of Israel. And so that's the same thing. So, but this time, like I said, I didn't go as much into the symbolism of all of those people there, but I really just was focusing on the search for the bride and what does that really look like for us, and tying in with those virgins. Are we being like those 5 wise virgins, and what are some of the traits of that, and are we displaying those characteristics, and what do we need to do in our own life to display more of those, So questions, comments, anything else y'all want to talk about?
Nobody want to say anything?
Anybody else want to say anything?
I want to say something.
Go ahead.
What do you think about the word Zohar in verse 8?
Which chapter? Wait a second.
Hold on. 23 verse 8.
Chapter 23. Oh, that Zohar. Yes. What about it?
Well, do you kind of connect that with the mayor of New York City? I mean,
where are we at?
He's talking about in chapter 23, verse 8.
I'm just questioning the mayor of New York City that just got elected. Is Zohar. It sounds like the same name.
I don't know if it's spelled the same. I don't know. I don't know what it's for some.
Yeah.
Ma'am, I don't know what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, there's another Zohar. I never really come that.
But I don't know if that's, I have to look it up because I don't know.
Because this
what
mine is spelled.
Yeah, it's spelled with a Zadi.
Yeah, TZOCHAL.
What is it?
Other places spelled real. Z-O-H-A-R.
Zoran. It's not Zohar. His name is Zoran. Zohran.
Hold on a minute. The King James says Soar or Zoar.
Yeah.
Hold on a minute.
Yeah. But the mayor is Zohran. Zoran, not Zohar.
Oh, okay. So it's not exactly the same.
No. So.
Abram's second wife, Keturah,
Mm-hmm.
or Hagar, do we know where she's buried?
No. I think the only. Yeah. Yeah. In the ground. Yeah.
Hot diggity dog.
No. I don't know if it
Maybe.
even says where
Or
she's
in the
buried.
Or in the cave.
Buried. I don't think it's a. Yeah, there's no. I don't think there's. I'm looking. I don't think there's a record of her being buried.
Or
Anywhere.
death or anything.
Mm-mm.
Okay.
Yeah, but when you look at Sarah, Sarah is one of the few that you knew how old she lived and died and where she was buried.
So
So
Kim, you don't mess with Zoe.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
that
that's that movie. Yeah,
Jude,
No.
Jude.
Yeah.
What's his name?
It was,
So-
Alan, what, no.
Sandler, which I never saw it. So yeah,
Well, no, did you?
yeah. So, but yeah, there's.
Don't mess with Zoe.
But yeah, that's there. I don't, and I think too when you look at, I find it interesting because they buy the field from Ephron,
Yeah.
and Ephron's name, the way it's written in Hebrew. When you look at that verse, it is written. Let me go right here. Is okay. Ephron is written Ayin Pei Resh Vav Nun. Okay, Ayin Pei Resh Vav Nun, and the vowel pointings make it sound Ephron. But if you read it in Hebrew without the vowel pointings, it can also be read Iparon. Iparon is the word for pencil. It's the modern day word for pencil. And I find it interesting that, Ephron's name is also the modern day word for pencil, Iparon, because what does he do? He's still like, I'll just give this to you, this field to you. And then he's like, oh no. Well, why? Because if you write a contract in a pencil, are you going to, it can be erased.
Yeah.
And so can it really be trusted? And so I think it's interesting the link there that, with Ephron, that
Yeah.
is not really somebody that could be trusted there. So.
If somebody would want to give away a piece of land, you sure sold it for a whole chunk of change.
You kind of.
Well, yeah. Okay. So,
I can see the grass.
so anybody else want to share anything? If not, we're going to go ahead and have the prayer, I guess. So,
Amen.
yeah.
Everybody want to get ready?
Are we ready?
Okay.
Y'all to get ready?
Yeah, Jack in the bathroom.
Okay.
Hold that.
Got it. We're waiting on a few others. So, okay. Got it.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, everybody's ready.
We're ready.
Yivirekaka Yahavavirish Meireha Yahir Yahava Penava Eleka Behuneka Yesayahava Penavaka Vayashim Laka Shalom. May Yahweh bless you and keep you. May Yahweh make his face to shine on you and show you his favor. May Yahweh lift up his face toward you and give you peace. B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach, Sar Shalom. Go in peace. Amen. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, 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 Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, 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 Shalom. Shabbat, 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 Shalom. Shabbat, 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 Shalom. Shabbat, Shalom. Shabbat, Shalom. Shabbat, 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 Shalom. You know, one thing the lesson I think teaches you too, you have to have, if you're going to see, Yah, you're going to be with him forever. You've got to have that oil in your lamp to lead you, to guide you, to be there with you. And, all of us, we've heard this all our life, but it's not just when we smile, when we hear, that means we understand, we walk in the way he wants us to walk, in righteousness and holiness. And I think that's all the key, He said, just like this hat, that's why I love this hat so much. It says set apart. It says you are different than the one in the world. You walk different, you talk different, you act different. You're set apart. You're different. You're his bride. And the one who has that oil, his bride, is the one he's going to be looking for. And so I think it's all, one of the better lessons. It's really good. And just be blessed. And we'll see you soon, hopefully. Dawn, Ken, Sandy, whoever else, is on, Debbie on. No, she went, so y'all be blessed. Do I?
Y'all have a great
You
week.
too.
Shabbat shalom.
Thank you.
Everybody
Such a
says-
good lesson. Thank you.